to you, and thank you for being with us today. It's just a minute past 10 a.m. here in Nairobi, East African time. I trust that your day has started off well. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are tuned in and joining us from this day, the 23rd of March 2023, and here are today's headlines. We start with the Star newspaper. Ruto, Raila take bitter fights to world powers. ODM leader terms Ruto an illegitimate president, accuses him of rights abuses. You'll find that story on page 4 and 5 on the Star newspaper. And then we have their showdown looming over Ruto plan to sell critical parastatals. That story is on page 6. And Kenyan migrant pinned to the floor before death. And couple murdered in suspected land tussle in Nyamira, and Unga prices to drop in 10 days. Linturi tells members of parliament. I'm sure that will be a great relief for Kenyans who are really going through some tough times, and not just Kenyans, but it is something that is across the world. The Standard newspaper. Ruto dilemma in handling Raila. President William Ruto has a decision to make on how to handle the ongoing protest against his government. The options he has on one table means he walks a tightrope as the opposition readies to go to the streets again next week. That story is on page 4, 5 and 6 on the Standard. Supplies manager defends 216 million Kenya shillings property portfolio, and Uganda MPs toughen laws against gays. Senators rail at Kenya Power over bills, and England seek revenge against Italy. That is on the sport pages. And Linturi try rice or potatoes instead of maize. Agriculture CS says the price of maize will go down in the next 10 days when imports arrive, but he urges Kenyans to find alternative sources of carbohydrates and not rely on the staple that is becoming too costly. Okay, the Daily Nation. And William Ruto, Raila agree to talks. Truth religious leaders, including Catholic bishops and Muslim clerics, as well as political and business honchos, yesterday urged President Ruto Mr. Raila to dialogue and resolve the standoff, but a headline president has likened the protest to economic sabotage, while opposition chief has raised the stakes. Will they sit down? That story is on page 4 and 5. And Unge subsidy puzzle of missing documents. Parliamentary investigations into former President Uhuru Kenyatta's 4 billion maize flour subsidy program have taken a new twist, and that story is on page 7. They are animals, mother says of U.S. police officers who killed her son. And MPs on a coalition course over plan to sell state farms without their nod. Okay, so that is what we have on the, on the front page of the leading newspapers from Kenya. From Tanzania, The Citizen. Now Tanzania can mitigate effects of global upheaval, and Kenya protests heat operations as key border post. Nobody should be exempt from prosecution, says TEC, and business leaders. World Bank emphasize PPS. That is what we have on the front page of The Citizen from Tanzania. The New Times. There's one from Rwanda. Over Rwandan francs 18 billion earmarked for fish horticulture production, and nobody should be exempt from prosecution. That is from the other newspaper. Okay, and then we head over to the Newsday from Zimbabwe. Al Jazeera expose, ED allies probed. And then the Daily News as well from Zimbabwe. Parties see eye to eye on peace as this year's national elections get closer. I think that is a very good news from Zimbabwe there. The Nation, this one is from Nigeria. Workers draw battle line over lingering naira scarcity. The Daily Trust from Nigeria as well. CBN, that is the Central Bank of Nigeria, releases mopped up old notes to banks today. Okay, I wonder why it had to wait for so long. I think they already had this, or there's a process that they have to go through before it's released back to the market, something that they really struggled to have back in their custody, but now it has to be released back to the market until the end of this year. I think they will be facing them off slowly as they make available the new bills. That is my thinking, but it's Nigeria, so anything is just possible. Maybe 3 months later, there'll still be a scarcity of both the old notes and the new notes. So, I mean, anyway, the Daily Monitor from Uganda. Vaccine factory owner seeks 2.2 trillion Ugandan shillings bailout. And that is what we have there. Some newspapers from the UK. Daily Express, Boris, hand on heart, I did not lie to House. He just swore there. Princess praise for troops on Ukraine border defending freedoms. Okay, and then iNews, Johnson in peril after angry clashes with inquiry. The Guardian, flimsy Partygate answers leave Johnson on the brink. And the Daily Telegraph, Johnson besieged but defiant. And the Metro, Boris, the backlash, that is on the Partygate inquiry. The Sun, Wills, the freedom fighter, that is also their prince in secret mission to Ukraine border. So they're calling him a freedom fighter. He hasn't met the Mau Mau. I don't know if he's aware of that. Those are freedom fighters, but I guess the soldiers in Ukraine are fighting to, protect their integrity as a country and as a people. So I don't know how William becomes a freedom fighter now, but it's interesting. So let's see if I can find us a little of sports news and how some of the newspapers from Kenya has covered some of these stories. Some sports news and top amateurs look for points at Muthaiga. That is on golf. And Taveta, Kisii counties hold school games. These are local sports stories across in Kenya. And then Sixers into playoffs after Nets fall. That I think is on basketball. And Japan down USA to win World Classic. That is on the World Baseball Classic. And New Zealand runner hit with 8-year ban. Commonwealth Games medalist Zane Robertson was banned from all sports for 8 years by a tribunal in New Zealand yesterday after testing positive for performance-enhancing drug and falsifying documents. Athletics New Zealand Chief Executive Peter Feisinger told AFP this is the longest ban handed out to an athlete from New Zealand. The 33-year-old Robertson, who is based in Kenya, who won bronze over 5,000 meters and the 2014 Commonwealth Games and also ran for New Zealand at the last 2 Olympic Games. So he comes here to train, build stamina, and then decides that is not enough. He has to top up that. But sometimes it's not really even the drug. Sometimes it's what they take as a part of medication or something, but some of these things contain certain elements that are considered to be performance enhancing. So I don't know whether he checked with his doctor or something, or he was just unaware, but he's been training in Kenya. All right. And on the Standard newspaper, England out for revenge as they face Italy. 2020 final rematch, an emotional charged reunion and a meeting between two European giants are on the agenda as the road to UEFA Euro 2024 begins today. The qualifying campaign begins with a bang as some of the biggest names in European football go head to head. UEFA.com identifies the main talking points ahead of the opening 2 rounds fixture. So Group C, that Italy will be facing England, North Macedonia will be facing Malta, and in Group H, Kazakhstan will be facing Slovenia at 6 p.m. Local time today. Denmark will be facing Finland, San Marino will be facing Northern Ireland, and the rest continues. Okay, so I guess that should be enough for sports this morning. So I'm sure you're up to date, but first let's also just get down with the climatic conditions today and see what the weather has in store for us. In Johannesburg, it's going to be mostly cloudy with highs of 24 degrees Celsius and lows of 14 degrees Celsius. In Nairobi, it's going to be mostly cloudy. We had some good rain overnight and early this morning, but I can see there's good amount of sunshine outside, so I guess it's bright and just great, and the rain is just what we needed, so we can't really complain. So it is expected to be mostly cloudy today in Nairobi, with highs of 25 degrees Celsius and lows of 17 degrees Celsius, and in Accra, Ghana, also partly cloudy with highs of 32 degrees Celsius and lows of 25 degrees Celsius, and in Dakar, Senegal, highs of 23 degrees Celsius and lows of 16 degrees Celsius, and it's going to be a very clear day there in Dakar. And in Abuja, lows of 23 degrees Celsius and highs of 36 degrees Celsius, and it's going to be very sunny in Abuja. And in Kinshasa, partly cloudy, lows of 22 degrees Celsius and highs of 29 degrees Celsius. And in Luanda, some thunderstorms are going to be part of the weather experience today there, with 29 degrees Celsius on the higher side and 24 degrees Celsius on the lower side. You are now up to date, and that is your weather forecast this morning, about 12 minutes past 10 a.m. here in Nairobi. And let's get into a detailed news discussion, and we start with South Africa. And South Africa's Foreign Minister, Naledi Pandor, has said the government will have to discuss the arrest warrant against President Vladimir Putin of Russia before considering any action. Mr. Putin is scheduled to travel to South Africa for the BRICS, that is a bloc that brings together Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And that summit is expected to happen in August. The International Criminal Court on the 17th of March issued an arrest warrant against Mr. Putin over alleged war crimes in Ukraine. As a signatory to the Rome Statute, South Africa is legally bound to detain Mr. Putin and bring him to trial. Now, Ms. Pandor said South African authorities will first consult with the Russian side regarding the warrant. And I'll just quote what she said to the SABC news channel in South Africa. She said, South Africa will have to look at existing provisions of our legislation. We also will have to have a discussion as a cabinet, as well as with our colleagues in Russia, and really determine the way forward. South Africa enjoys a quite tight relations with Moscow in spite of Western condemnation. So what South Africa essentially saying, we might have to ask Putin, do we arrest you or not? How would you like for us to arrest you? How would how should that arrest look like? Would you like to be arrested when you arrive in South Africa? Because I'm imagining what kinds of conversation will South Africa be having with Russia in line with this ICC warrant of arrest that was issued against Putin on the 17th of March. First of all, it's just not going to happen. And it will not be the first time that South Africa has refused to comply with such a warrant of arrest. Remember, President Omar al-Bashir, while he was still president, traveled to South Africa, and it was expected that perhaps he will be arrested, that South Africa will comply, being a member to this Rome Statute. So South Africa will comply with this warrant of arrest and arrest former President of Sudan, Omar al-Bashir. South Africa did not do that. Neither did Kenya do that, because Omar al-Bashir also traveled to Kenya, I think, during an inauguration ceremony of our third president, Mwai Kibaki, I believe. He came, he graced the celebrations. Kenya did not arrest him. President Omar al-Bashir went back to Sudan safe and sound. Of course, Kenya was condemned, but, the world moved on. So I don't think South Africa is going to arrest Putin, surely. The kind of ties and the kind of defiance that South Africa has already shown in the face of this conflict in Ukraine, and how they've really been, the kind of things they've been doing together, even as BRICS. Remember, just a few days ago, they were having that military drill in the seas in South Africa. And, it was really, a lot of people questioned the timing of that, seeing what is happening and what that meant, that South Africa would allow such a drill to be happening in its country and within its waters and with its authorization. And many looked at it as if South Africa is, maybe in support of this invasion, or perhaps the timing is wrong, or, things like that. And South Africa said it's not the first time that we're having this drill. And this drill had been planned a while back. So regardless of what is happening in Ukraine that involves Russia, our relationship with Russia still stands, has not been affected. It is not our problem. We don't want to be drawn into that. So we will support the partners that we choose to support and do whatever it is. And so South Africa will continue to be defiant. Maybe the EFF, which we see is very effective in organizing protests and demonstrations. Maybe we'll go out and protest if at all Putin goes to, visit South Africa in August for this BRICS summit. I'm sure Malema will go out there and protest, and his team, and then that's all they can do. And then go back. That's all they can do. But I don't see a situation where the South African government is going to arrest President Putin of Russia when he visits South Africa. I think the ties, there's a historic, when these Western countries push Africa to take sides in this war in Ukraine. I've said it and I'll repeat it just quickly. Whatever is happening, of course, is not right. But as individual countries, we have a right to take whichever position. For those who want to come out and condemn this war, they'll come out, and they've already come out and condemned this war. For those who want to remain neutral and just look at it as afar and be non-allied with whichever side, it is within their rights to do that. For those who want to support Russia and its allies, they also have a right to do with that. And, in the international system, the issue of morality, as Hans Morgenthau would argue, the issue of morality and national interest, those things don't go together. They never mix. They never flood. They never fellowship. They don't come together. Because when you are making decisions that are of a bigger interest of your country, a lot of times it will clash with what is moral, what is considered human right, what is considered even Christian or religious or whatever. So morality and national or state's interest, those two things don't exist within the same sentence. And so South Africa will always do what is right for South Africa. The US, who are now the moral prefect of the world, they did not have a problem in the name of wanting to bring democracy and to fight autocracy and a dictator, did not have a problem destroying Iraq. And they have their reasons to defend their actions, despite of the kind of ravage effect that unnecessary war brought to Iraq. Despite the kind of damage it has done to the people and the country of Iraq and Libya, they had to look for reasons even before the UN could pass that. The US and Britain and France, they led NATO into invasion of Libya. Look at what Libya is today. Is it morally right that the US would do that? Absolutely not. Were they coming there to, defend human rights? I think that was the pretense, but instead they have increased the human rights abuses there by exposing, Libya and now its porous border, the armed people, and nobody could be held accountable. They left arms in the hands of people who had no business having arms. So that played into destroying Libya, okay, and Iraq and all that. So these countries that champion for liberalism, that champion for human rights, that champion for strong institutions, that champion for democracy, they are the same countries that actually, when you look at it, with the exception of Russia, Russia is not a liberalist. Putin is a realist. He looks at things from whatever he feels is right for Russia, and of course, I think much of it is driven by his own personal ambitions, and feeling about certain things that have happened over history, that he feels it's about time for him to address some of these issues, and he still hang on what he still feels Russia can be and what USSR was, and he's not over. And that's why when Gorbachev died, the last USSR president, he died I think sometimes last year, Putin did not even attend his funeral, and it was a public funeral. He did not even attend it, and so that tells you his feelings about how he feels when USSR was disintegrated. So he's never been happy about that. Before the disintegration of USSR, we had a bipolar world, two superpowers, the United States and the USSR. And of course, the West really worked hard to make sure that was dismembered. So that is just one of the things that Putin, in his bigger scheme of things, is perhaps trying to achieve. And that's why he keeps annexing this region. And he wants to consolidate maybe back. It cannot be far-fetched. That could be one of his ambitions, to consolidate back this union, to ensure that the balance of power in the international system works out against the US. But anyway, I digress for right now. But what I'm saying is, Russian president will not be arrested when he goes to South Africa. Because as I was explaining, giving all these examples of Iraq and Libya and what happened, and these countries that are the crusaders of democracy and human rights protections, have committed an untold suffering and have violated human rights in these countries, led by the United States, have violated because they insist, to insist on having a Western democracies in this country that maybe might not augur well with the settings of these societies. Western democracy cannot always work everywhere. There are other countries that practice their own way of governance, and it suits the purview, or it suits the local politics as is, and so it should be left like that. So, but the US has been, it has given itself that position of wanting to spread this Western democracy at whatever cost, even as it spreads its agenda and to meet its own, foreign policy objectives. And so that has been the case. So you can't tell South Africa what to do, whether that ICC warrant of arrest is there or not. Russian president will come to South Africa. He will get into his jet and he will jet back to Moscow, and nothing will happen to him. Ramaphosa is not going to hand over President Putin to ICC. That is not going to happen. Not when the Russian oligarch is the one who is funding the meetings for ANC. Nada. It's not going to happen. Those oligarchs, they work with the usually they partner with the government, with the president. So when they're giving you some money or any kind of support, or they're having any kind of relationship, that is because even a lot of times they're working on behalf of the state of Russia. So that Russian oligarch that funded the convention for ANC party in South Africa, I was telling you about that the other day. So that, and it's it could be likely that even this monies, and I'm just thinking allegedly, as there's no truth to that, that could be even came from Moscow. But they have to, it has to come through certain channels, because ANC, a big party as it is in South Africa, cannot fund its own activities, and so we let this infiltration into our local democracies and our internal affairs, and then at the end of the day we'll start complaining about external interference while we keep inviting these people into issues that they should not even having stakes on. And so there's a lot at stake, and the relationship between South Africa and Russia, I think, is very, very important for South Africa. And Putin the other day just alluded at how much he places premium on the relationship of Russia with with Africa as a whole, and that's why you see a lot of efforts being concentrated, even as Russia tries to have more influence over the continent. Something that is really worrying some other actors also in the international system, and specifically the United States. And you can see that because of the high level of people who are being sent to come and engage in the continent. We saw the wife of the president, the First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, was in Kenya a few days ago and also visited other countries. We saw the State Secretary Blinken was in Ethiopia the other day, and just after Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov had been there a few days back, and also he visited other countries. And then after that, Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the U.S., also is set to visit a few countries across Africa. So Africa is very important, not just for Russia, but also to the U.S. and also to other, influences, because it has become the place where their interest is represented and where their influence wants to play out and their dominance and where they want to exact their power. So in the process, we have to be very, very careful, because these proxy wars and these interests, when they start playing out here, and then you'll start hearing cases like what we heard happen in the Central African Republic, where there were allegations that a French brewery was targeted by the mercenaries. And according to the reports from France, they have substantial evidence and video that is capturing this. The Wagner Group, a few individuals going out and throwing petrol bombs or things like that into this establishment company that is French owned, and destroyed and did all this. So that is just an aspect of a proxy war when they bring it into this continent. So what will happen then? This brewery had so many people that it had employed who are from Central African Republic. So if you were targeting, and of course France is making money from that because it's French owned, so that means people get to suffer, and these things can be bloody. There's conflicts. This kinds of interest, when they start colliding in a country, then even instability rises. And so we should be very careful, I think, in how we decide to engage as countries with these Western powers, even our trusted old allies that we've had a good working relations with. I think it's very important that we interrogate on an issue-based perspective on what agenda do they have when they're pushing for this, now that they want to intensify their presence here through activities and funding and all this. What is the goal, and how can we make sure that we collaborate in a manner that we are not inviting trouble? In a manner that we're not playing into their proxy war, in a manner that we're not aiding them in achieving whatever it is they're trying to achieve. So we have to be very careful in how we choose to engage, now that we have the attention of the world and everybody else seems to think Africa is the new frontier, and it is very important, a part of the international system, and that's why we receive all this attention that we receive, and they care to come here. And so it is something that we have to think about. It is something that we have to interrogate, and I'm just hoping that our governments will be a bit smarter in how we handle some of these actors, and what they bring and what their presence means and what even their help means to our countries. Like the other day, Russia was saying that it is willing to feed Africa for free, but on a condition that some of the agreements that our countries have made with Ukraine, once they and there's some few agreements that have been signed, then Africa should not be, or countries from Africa should not be renewing these agreements with Ukraine. Russia, if you want to feed Africa, go ahead and feed Africa, but you cannot tell us who to relate with. Right? The same thing I say to the West, that you can tell us how to respond in this conflict. The same thing, I think, to Russia, that also goes. You should not be telling us who to work with, who to partner with, because at the end of the day, we should be able to look at our own interest and decide how do we relate, how do we further our diplomatic relations with the different countries that are willing to partner and work with us. If you're very kind and you're feeling very philanthropic, Russia, and you have this food in excess, please take it to Somalia. They need it. Please take it to these countries that really need this help, but don't bring conditions. We already have too much of that here. Don't bring conditions. If you're helping and you're just being kind and you just want to give us free food, well, an economist will tell you there's really never nothing for free in this world. Nobody can give you anything for free. There's always a price tag attached to it. So there's nothing like free food that Russia is going to bring into this continent. Okay, what is the opportunity cost behind that? What will that cost us that we may not see? Because there's nothing like free. There's nothing like I went and met with this person and I had free lunch. No, there's nothing for free. Economists will tell you there's nothing for free. Someone is always paying for it. There's always somebody who's taking up that cost. So even this free food that Russia wants to bring to Africa, someone will be paying for it. Those gold mines in Central African Republic might be paying for it. That I hear the mercenaries are there and are really taking advantage. So there's nothing like free food that Russia wants to bring to Africa. But if it feels very philanthropic and it has surplus, which I think it does, just give it and don't bring us conditions. It is unfair. The same way some African countries do not want to take up a position in this matter and distance themselves, that is the same way and the same approach that we should have towards Russia. So if Russia wants to engage, that is fine. Everybody else is engaging with Africa, so why not? But these conditions that you put, that now we must stop talking and having diplomatic relations with Ukraine or whichever country, that should not happen. And this thing of our leaders lining up in the ports, in the airports, to receive free food in Africa, that thing agitates me. And the reason why is because we have heard from statistics that Africa has the most arable and cultivated arable land, not just in Africa, but in the world. So why would we not take care of that? Why would we not engage in agriculture? And in most of our countries, you'll hear that agriculture is the backbone of the society, while we have so many of our people who can't even afford to eat a meal a day. So it's just sad that food now will be used as a means for diplomatic engagement, as a means of soft power. That falls under soft power. That is quite unfortunate that somebody has to work with food, and this food will have to determine, how we relate. They say, if you don't, then I'll take it back. If you don't, if you're not willing to dance to my tune, then as much as the spoon is almost closer to your mouth, I have a right to pull it back. And no, I think we're better than this. I think we should be more dignified than this. The same dream our forefathers had, to make sure that we are food secure. Many, many years later, after the first country, that is Ghana, received its independence, we are still fighting and we are still trying to achieve. I don't know if the current leadership is even trying to achieve that, because nobody is really addressing the issue of food security. Well, maybe a few countries, like Zambia and others, are really trying to address the issue of food security in a more robust way. I don't know how we don't see this should be at top of our agenda as governments in the continent, and see that our people at least can be fed. At least the minimum. Our people can be fed. We can have enough for our people because we are capable. We've been blessed with a great weather. We've been blessed with a population that works hard. But the leadership keeps failing its people. And now Russia has to give us conditions. For me to feed your hungry population, then you must now stop talking to so-and-so. And we see Ukraine also bringing us grain here in the effort of buying our loyalty, of buying our support. Man, food shouldn't be used in this manner. And the fact that we lack so much that these powers have to use food to entice us, how is it that you're not ashamed? How is it that our leaders have the audacity to show up at the at the ports to receive food that has come in, by ships docking from countries that are ravaged with war, and we're still sitting here talking, about how independent we are and how sovereign, countries we have in this continent, and we can't feed our people? That is just sad. It's just sad, and we must be committed. We must be committed to address the issue of food insecurity. It cannot be the bargaining chip for our sovereignty, for the dignity of our people. It cannot be that people will use food to buy our support. That is not how we need to be engaging in our diplomacy in the international system. It cannot be food, surely. When we can produce our own food here, we can really feed our own people. And we can buy food between the different African countries. We really can. If it's wheat, there are countries that have great potential in Africa that can be feeding us. Ethiopia, for instance. It is known to produce a lot of wheat. If Ethiopian government really increased its production and focused on that, because that is one of the strengths it has as long as food production is concerned, the rest of us here from Kenya and other countries will be willing, because it's even much closer, will be willing to support that and be buying from Ethiopia and other countries. So this nonsense has to stop. I don't know who I'm even talking to this morning, but at some point we have to have some shame, man. We must have some level of dignity that says, no, this can't be. We can do better by our people. We can protect the dignity of our people. Look at the news every now and then. The UN is begging for food aid. For a country like Somalia, I do understand, because of the years of, and Sudan, I have a soft spot for these two countries. Because of the insecurity, because of the turbulence, because of the war that is ongoing and the extremist activities, especially for a country like, Somalia. So I understand the conditions there that have made these countries not able to really address the issue of food insecurity. But Kenya, what is your excuse? Uganda, what is your excuse? Although Uganda has been known to be food secure, but I think the effects of climate change really affected its last harvest. And Tanzania and the rest. What is our excuse? We don't have wars. We just have protests here and there, and it's not always. But we have conditions. We have good soil. We have good weather. Why can't we feed our people? What is the problem? What is it? That these leaders you keep electing and they're not able to deliver, they're not able to make sure that your interests are secured, but you keep electing them and you keep having them there. But they don't care that you're hungry. They'd rather go back than empower you. If rain-fed agriculture is proving to be not viable because of the climatic conditions and the climate change, then you can adopt other ways. I keep saying, look at Israel. It's able to feed itself. These Middle East countries, they're dry countries, and they don't have the kind of weather we have here. They don't have the kind of soil and arable lands that we have here. But you will never hear of anybody dying of hunger there. What is it that they're doing to ensure they address the issue of food insecurity? And how can we learn from these best practices and ensure that our people are fed? Our people don't suffer. Our people are not used as chips for bargaining, as bargaining chips. They're not used as collateral because they're hungry. How can we really address the issue of food insecurity? This is a matter that we have to take seriously. Rain-fed agriculture that is not working. We have lakes, we have rivers. Now it's raining. Is anybody trying to collect that water and find ways of preserving it? Or we are waiting later on, the next year we have floods now in some areas and all that. Then after a while, you'll hear now we're back to the drought. Why can't we have policies in place and people that we know that are professionals that can really help us in these things to ensure that we are able to aggressively, it needs an aggressive approach, this food security. It requires an aggressive commitment and see how much are we allocating in agriculture? What are the ways and the strategies that we can use to address this and ensure that we are able to make up the difference, and find ways to mitigate, and to work around the climatic conditions that we have now. That's why you have technology. We have a whole university, like here in Kenya, dedicated to science and Jomo Kenyatta University, agriculture. I think it's in agriculture and science and technology. And we still have these problems you have here. We have to be serious sometimes. We have to be serious sometimes. So anyway, the story came from Putin. South Africa saying they will consult with Putin on whether they want to arrest him or not. When it comes for the BRICS meeting in South Africa in August, and my answer to that is no. South Africa does not have intentions of arresting Putin, and South Africa will not arrest Putin. So ICC and those Western powers that filed this case or that pushed ICC to issue this warrant of arrest, you are going to have a big egg on your face, because that is not going to work. In fact, right now, Putin will just travel the world just to prove to you that nobody will arrest him. He'll go to countries that are even near and dear to you, that you have better relations with. And he'll just go there just for the sake to prove to you that nobody will arrest him. So even that warrant of arrest that was issued against Putin, I think it was not well thought of. It's just a bad idea. Not because he does not deserve it, but you have to look at what's going on before you make certain decisions, and you don't left with you being embarrassed. So I want to run through quickly some of the stories that I had for us that has taken a bit long, pardon me. We go to Tunisia, where the US has said that it is vital that Tunisia reaches a deal with IMF. The AFP news agency reports amid warnings of a looming economic collapse in the country. So the US insisting, and also France is insisting, that there is an economic collapse that is looming in Tunisia. And the other day, President Kais Saied was very annoyed about these claims. He's saying, my economy is great. What is your problem? We don't have an economic collapse looming. So the US today is saying that the most critical thing they can do on the economic side is actually get an IMF agreement, said the US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, and we would strongly encourage them to do that because the economy risks falling off the deep end. If President Kais Saied feels this way, and I'm sure he will ask for help, why are you insisting on him that his economy collapse is looming, and he's telling you, no, we have it, our economy is stable? Why is it the US's problem or France's problem to keep insisting on how bad the economy of Tunisia is? Could be some truth to that. But if President Kais Saied does not feel the same and does not want to ask for help, why are you insisting that he should go get a loan that he feels is not necessary for his country right now? He might want it later. He might need it, the country might need it later, but for right now, Kais Saied has insisted that France, we don't have an economic problem. And now US is already coming out and saying that, insisting that Tunisia needs to go get a loan. Why? If Tunisia wants to get a loan, it's under its prerogative. President Kais Saied, as crazy as he is and as ridiculous of decisions as he makes there in Tunisia, if he says that the economy is well and it's stable, then who are you to come and question that, and insist that the economy is so bad, please go get a loan? Why are you deciding for Tunisia that it needs an IMF loan? Why? If Tunisia feels they need that loan, then President Kais Saied, or maybe they're just waiting to frustrate him in that, because these loans are normally issued by conditions. And President Kais Saied has been violating, the democratic reforms and the democratic gains that have been made in Tunisia since the Arab uprising. He has censured, he literally leads by decree in Tunisia. He has seen an election that had the lowest turnout in the world. He has seen a referendum that had the lowest turnout in the world. He has muzzled the judiciary. He has muzzled opposition. He is just contrary to everything the West believe. So I think they're just enticing him to come so that when he wants to have this loan, now they have the conditions. You have to release this. You have to stop oppressing the opposition. If you want this loan, you have to do this and this and that. And maybe that's why Kais Saied is saying, you know what, I'm good. I don't need this loan. Because why would the U.S. insist for a country that you need this loan? Well, this country is not even applying for this loan, for heaven's sakes. But I do understand maybe that is where they need to perhaps put some, some of these requirements for Tunisia for it to get this loan. And Tunisia has a long history of economic hardship, having never recovered from the years of political turmoil that followed the overthrow of President Zine al-Abidine Ben Ali in 2011, because Tunisia was the springboard for the Arab uprising, if we can remember what happened in that country. And then we go very quickly to Ethiopia, where Parliament has voted to remove the Tigray People's Liberation Front, TPLF, from the country's terror blacklist. For months after the group signed a peace deal to end a brutal war against the government, the truce signed in November in South Africa's capital Pretoria ended a 2-year conflict that led to thousands of deaths and warnings of famine. Delisting TPLF as a terrorist organization, was among the highlights of the agreement, which also included a disarmament plan, which we know has already taken place, and the restoration of crucial services in the northern Tigray region, which has already started, and I think the process is going on well. And the Oromo Liberation Army, an armed group which announced a military alliance with the TPLF during the conflict, still remains on the terror list. The terror list. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has previously committed to implementing the peace agreement, so the peace agreement is going well there in Ethiopia. I have so much to say about it, but because of time, I'll just skip over to the next news item. And United Nations human rights still has to do with Ethiopia. United Nations human rights experts warn that peace in northern Ethiopia's Tigray region will not last unless violations committed during the more than 2 years of armed conflict are investigated and perpetrators held to account. The 3-member UN International Commission on Human Rights Experts on Ethiopia, which presented its latest report to the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva on Tuesday, which the US spoke about and which Ethiopia already had a rebuttal on, welcomed the November 2nd peace agreement that ended hostilities between the Ethiopian government and the Tigray People's Liberation Front, or the TPLF. Now, since the peace agreement was signed, the region has witnessed a significant and so far sustained reduction in conflict, and that is according to the chair of the commission, Mohamed Chande Othman. And despite this positive development, Othman told the Human Rights Council the gravity and scale of violations committed in Ethiopia since the war's outbreak in November 2020 must not be forgotten, and I'll just quote him. Our 2022 September report found reasonable grounds to believe that all parties to the conflict had committed war crimes and violations and abuses of human rights since fighting erupted in 2020. So this is what they said, that all parties, I don't know why Ethiopian government was making noise yesterday saying this, the report and what the US was saying, they were cherry picking, and they seem to be leaning and they had a bias towards the TPLF and their things. The government forces are being accused that, TPLF was not being accused. But according to this report, that based on what this report is what made Blinken to make the statements that he made. And according to this report, the chairperson who was responsible and leading these efforts of this report said all sides. And this report, there's part of it that was presented in September. Our 2022 September report found reasonable grounds to believe that all parties, everybody, TPLF, government forces, Eritrean forces, Amara forces, everybody had committed war crimes and violations and abuses of human rights since the fighting erupted in November 2020. So everybody is responsible for this. This view was echoed on Tuesday in the U.S. State Department's annual report on human rights violations around the world. The Ethiopian government rejected the U.S. assertion that all sides in the 2-year Tigray war committed war crimes, calling the statement inflammatory. That is high-level denial. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is saying, these statements are not true. We did not commit war crimes. Yeah. The UN Commission has continued to investigate these allegations in addition to accusations of serious violations and abuses committed since the signing of the peace agreement. The Commission has documented serious offenses allegedly committed by all parties, including Eritrean forces operating on Ethiopian territory and forces from the Tigray, Afar, Amhara, and Oromia regions, and the report continues. And then Malawi President Lazarus Chakwera is appealing for additional humanitarian assistance for thousands of Malawians displaced by Cyclone Freddy, which has killed more than 500 people in the country. Chakwera made the urgent request to Malawi's parliament on Wednesday when he was presenting an assessment of the impact of the cyclone, which also hit Mozambique. I think this is the time that African countries should come in. I saw a few of African countries sending help in Turkey, which there's nothing wrong with that. I think we all need help every now and then. And when you have these kinds of crises, especially these natural calamities, which sometimes can be quite dire, then anybody from anywhere in the world should be coming in and helping. And Malawi has been badly hit by this cyclone. And I'm surprised not many African countries are willing to come in. President Chakwera has been appealing for help. I haven't seen any food leaving Kenya here going to Malawi. I haven't seen South Africa offering any kind of help to Malawians. I haven't seen, but we're very quick to carry food and support and take it to Turkey or any other country around the world that is suffering, which there's nothing wrong with that. But it's just, I don't know, our psyche sometimes is just messed up in how we choose to respond to the issues in this continent and the priorities that we give. But Malawi needs our help as a continent, and so we should come in and help Malawians however we can. And this other last story should be a warning to the rest of the leaders in the continent, as thousands of Namibians on Tuesday flocked the VIP tent at the independence celebrations after President Hage Geingob ordered all invited guests to forego their prepared lunch. It's not that he ordered, it's because the people really there were ready to go eat the food. This was the Independence Day celebrations, and the people were hungry who had showed up to that stadium. And I think President just seeing that this will not sit well with the people. And Namibians were already coming close and going to access that food that was set aside for the VIP. The local media reported chaos in Otapi, the capital of the northern region of Omusati, where the celebrations were held. Some attendees reportedly stormed VIP tents when rumors about shortage of food prepared for the day started spreading among the crowd. So they decided, no way, we got not enough food. We are going to get the VIP food that the president and his guests are supposed to eat on this wonderful Independence Day. It is our Independence Day, and we're going to leave this stadium after listening to their long speeches with our stomachs full. I know I'm trying to make a light of this situation, but that is just to tell you the situation as far as hungry Africans is going on around the continent, and this is something we cannot be treating as normal anymore, man. We need to find ways of feeding our people. We have to. That has to be a priority. So President Geingob had to forfeit that food, and people are scrambling for it. There was a stampede there over food. People are hungry, so he was embarrassed. And because, as if I was the president, then I'll take it as a challenge, and I'll go and do better in addressing the issue of agriculture in my country. So I hope that is what the Namibian president, So the Namibian president last week shelved plans to serve extra dishes like Greek salad to VIPs during an Independence Day celebrations following criticism on social media. I remember seeing that story And Namibians are like, why are you including Greek salad? We are in Namibia. Do we not have local vegetables here? And why can't you serve that to your guest, the local delicacy? Why are you serving Greek salad in Namibia? We are Namibians. We are not from Greece. So that also became problematic. So, you know, when your government is tone deaf, that's what you get. And I guess the people will keep going for these leaders when it comes to how hungry they are, until they pay attention and find ways to addressing this problem. I want to thank you so much as I give way to our next show. Thank you so much for your time this morning. We shall be back but this time we'll be on the Twitter Spaces, so hopefully you can join us there as we look at the conversation about the ICC and Africa's involvement and position in that international court, and why, even with all these things that have been happening, some of us have not considered leaving that institution. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.